My name is Richard Harrison. I was a sonarman on Growler. Well, the first piece of equipment, and the most frequently used piece of equipment for us was the BQR-2. It was the workhorse of the submarine fleet when I was in. We were just getting rid of the old BQR-1s and the old World War II versions, which were pretty good sonars for the time. But the BQR-2 was an array of individual hydrophones in a circle, and we would be able to actively select the individual hydrophones. I don't remember how many there were. There were a bunch of them. So we would be able to select one or two of them at a time, and that way be able to actively track the various contacts where we were. That was strictly a passive piece of gear, but it was also tied with the BQS-4, and it was that was our active sonar. We never really used it that much. It was always on, ready to go, but what the BQS would do was it had a CRT, a cathode ray tube display, that would show a wedge of sound. So it would match what we were tracking on the passive set as well. And then we would record, of course, the sounds that the tape recorder was running all the time. That was in the sonar room, but also in the sonar room, I'm trying to remember, we had two or three other pieces of equipment. I can't remember their designators right away. But one of them was a repeater for the fathometer, which was housed out in the control room. The officer of the deck and the navigator would use that more often than anything else, more often than we would anyways. But there were various filters and stuff that we could use to, if we were taping something, we could filter out the background noise to be able to listen specifically to unique sounds. So we could identify a particular vessel, that type of stuff. But that was it. The hydrophone array on Growler was in the nose, right underneath the forward torpedo room. It was an appendage that stuck down, and it housed the array of the hydrophones, and then it also housed in the center of it the ball that was the transmitter, the transducer, I should say, that was used to transmit the sound. Well, the biggest reason it was located there was it was the quietest. If you housed it anywhere else, it would have to be picking up all of the background noise from the equipment in the back of the boat. You know, the various auxiliary stuff, the engines, the motors, the electrical equipment, all of that stuff. So they put it somewhere where it would be ideally as quiet as it possibly could be. And then they, of course, sound isolated it when they built it up, and so that's why they put it up there. This is the BQS-4.
Here,
Yeah.
you see that in the, maybe you hold it up under your face. So that, yeah.
That's
Lovely
the active.
BQS-4.
That's the active stack of
Okay.
the BQS-4.
And so this is where you would see, you could track the.
Yeah.
sound on it.
What we would see when we had a contact is this yellow or orange CRT would have a wedge of sound that would show up. And it would show up on a bearing that wherever the contact was, and that's the BQR-2, and that's the passive stack, and that's what we would be listening on, and that's where we spend most of our time. This was the controller that allowed us to select which hydrophones we were listening to. So it matched the course and speed of our ship, our submarine, and we would be able to then determine what direction the contact was in relationship to the ship. This particular graph up here, again, was a visual display of the sounds that were coming in. It was a graph, okay? This would be, the CRT, but this would give you a graph of the overall noise level that was going on, and you'd be able to tell when it was dark that there was a contact there. The various meters on either side would, you'd go left or right, and the sound would vary on it, and it would tell you whether or not you needed to turn back and go back to a different direction if it was shifting one way or the other. So, yeah. And the various volume controls, and then was what they called an automatic tracking feature, where if you had just one contact that you were dealing with, you could switch it into ATF, and what it would do is it would take the information from the various meters here, and it would self-select the hydrophones that you wanted. So it made it easier for you to let the equipment tell you what direction it was going and give you a better idea of what was actually happening. The lazy man's way of listening to it. And then, of course, connections to the sound, and so that you could talk to. That's what those things are up there. Is if you wanted to, they could patch into the equipment that was in the forward torpedo room while you were working on it, and so on and so forth. So you didn't have to holler out the door. They couldn't hear you anyway that way. Generally speaking, I can tell whether or not it's a commercial vessel or a military vessel. I can tell whether it's large or small. I can tell based on its speed, how big it is, and the sounds from a smaller vessel are different than the sounds from a larger vessel. By the number of screws that they had, I could tell, basically what we were looking at, what we were hearing, and where it was, and how fast it was going. But other than that, not much. Again, part of my job and what I did that made me bounce around on so many different submarines was I concentrated on being able to identify the unique sounds. I became an analyst. So I was very good at being able to differentiate between the various sounds and could identify various vessels based on what I had heard before, based on what I was anticipating that would be in the region, be able to tell what was going on. We always had a reel loaded, ready to go, and anytime we got a contact that, we would hit record and we would start recording it. If it was something we could identify without any problems and we didn't need to have anything more of it, we'd stop the recording and just let it go. But anytime we did get a contact and we started the recording, if it was something that was unique or there was something unique about the encounter, then we would keep the recording, we would mark it and send it back to analysts when we got back in. What happened was we were on station and they were moving from one spot to another, and we picked up a contact, and it was a military contact. It was I'm trying to remember what the designator was on it, and frankly, I'm sorry, I can't. It was one of the smaller vessels, but it was they used them in the anti-submarine warfare. It was smaller than a destroyer, and there were a couple of destroyers, a couple of these smaller craft, and I picked up the smaller craft to start with, and we recognized it as a military, and so we started listening for anything else, and we started picking up a couple of the other vessels. One of them was larger. It turned out to be a destroyer. We reported it, and of course we're tracking it and trying to stay out of the way, at the same time staying on station, not going too far from where we were supposed to be. The spooks told us that it was, in fact, an ASW operation, and because they had listened to the radio chatter. And what happened was we started to be as quiet as possible, but they were all over the place, and we tracked them. And what ended up happening was the destroyer and the coastal vessel decided that they had a good track on the submarine. That was the exercise. Is that they would go out and they would try and find it. They would track it. They would get a course and speed on it, and then report it as being such and such. And then they would radio and say, we hold you bearing such and such and at range so and so. And so that way they would say how good their sonarmen were and all the rest of this kind of stuff. And they had done this exercise a couple of times, and then they went through it another time. And what happened was they plotted the course and speed, and they reported it to the submarine, saying, this is what we have. We hold you bearing Humpty Dumpty. And the submarine radioed back and said, no, we are at such and such a point and doing such and such a course and speed. And they said, oh, no, you're over here, and this is what it is. And they said, no, 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 we are not. We are over here. And they shot a flare to verify where they were. And it just absolutely brought chaos into the entire operation. I mean, whoa, wait a minute, we've got a contact here. And they had identified it as a submarine. So obviously they picked up something that we were making noise with. And so they instantly went into, okay, we've got to find out what this is. And we decided now was a good time to get the hell out of Dodge. And we had to try and do that as quietly as possible. So of course we went down as deep as we could possibly go, and sat on the bottom for a little while and tried to be as quiet as we could. And they did their damnedest to find us, and they dropped depth charges on us to try and force us to the surface. I mean, they had a good enough fix on us that they came damn close. They obviously missed us, thank God. And so we managed to quietly scoot away as they would run their course and drop their depth charges and try to make a surface. I really don't think they were trying to sink us per se. I think they were just trying to make a surface. And that way they got all kinds of PR out of it, American submarine, no. And God knows if we had have surfaced and it had been the Growler, they would have went crazy with that, with the, missile submarines off their coast. No. There was no way we were going to let them see us. And we managed to get out of the way. It took us a while, but we got out of the way, and they lost us and lost interest on us, and ended up going back home. So that was it. A very, very large boom. Okay, depending on how far away it is, but I think what they started with was what they call practice depth charges, which are a much smaller explosive. But when that, didn't do anything, they started getting a little bit bigger. It's just that it's a boom. I mean, if you're on the stack and it goes off, it'll deafen you. You won't be able to hear anything for a while. But when they drop something into the water, you can hear it drop. You will also hear other sounds as it's going down, and that's time to take the headphones off and let it go without having it deafen you.